Printed LEGO Waistcapes have become somewhat of a discussion point in recent years, and if you're anything like me, you really miss the old cloth Waistcapes. If you're anything more like me, then you might be looking to buy some custom Waistcapes to fill this void in your heart. And if you're even more like me, then you're probably wondering, where should I buy these custom Waistcapes to get the best quality and the best bang for my buck? And then, if you're still even more like me, you probably thought, well, hey, why don't I buy from a bunch of these places and make a video comparing them all and put a really cringy meta humor intro in the beginning? And then, if you're even more like me, then you should probably get in contact with some world leaders and let them know that the world is going to end. Because according to the big brain equations of this guy, so many awesome particles occupying a space as small as that of the Earth will cause an inevitable collapse into a black hole. So, if that sounds like you, then go and find your own plane of existence, buddy, because I've got a video about Waistcapes to make. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, there are dozens of these websites selling custom Waistcapes. But since I don't want to make this video 40 minutes long, and also since I don't have bottomless pockets, I figured that I'd just stick to 3. Those 3 being the ones that you saw earlier: Clone Army Customs, MandR Shop, and King Customs. I'll explain my rationales for choosing each one of these when their respective segments start. And leading the charge is Clone Army Customs. I selected CAC first and foremost because they are perhaps the biggest name in the realm of customs. And secondly, because they have a very large selection of custom cloth pieces. Like, in all seriousness, if you can think up a design or a color combination, they probably have it on their website. If you buy from Clone Army Customs, you're going to end up paying about $2 to $3 per waistcape, depending on the type of waistcape. It's not terrible, but it can add up fairly fast. As for the actual product itself, in all sincerity, I was expecting a little bit better. When you first take it out of the package, it can be a little bit off-putting. It's covered in some kind of a glossy sheen that lingers on your fingers for quite a bit after you're done handling them. Something else that surprised me about Clone Army Customs was the backside of all of them. They are only one-sided. The backs are all the exact same. It's not printed on fabric. I'd say it's more of a plastic, definitely a plastic, though it does feel fairly sturdy. However, that same sturdiness that might feel nice right out of the package does turn into somewhat of a pain in the butt when you try to get it on. The only reason why I was able to get it on so smoothly here was because I had done it about a half a dozen times in a row on other troopers before I hit record for this one. And when I say smoothly, of course I mean I'm still struggling quite a bit here. So, hitting fast forward real quick, we can see the final product, and it doesn't look too bad. It actually looks pretty good. The material that they use here is fairly stiff and fairly thick, so it does poof out quite a bit. Here you can see a side-by-side between the Clone Army Customs on the right and the official LEGO Cama on the left, and I think that without even being here in person, you can tell a pretty big difference through the camera. The Clone Army Customs one just looks thicker, which, might I add, does not translate to durability, but I think that overall the shape of it is pretty close to what LEGO has. It's got similar dimensions, it sits at a similar height, but it definitely does not feel as playable as the official LEGO version. It's a lot more crinkly, and after you have them for a couple of days, some of the coloring does start to peel off. The CAC is definitely 100% an aesthetic. So if you want to set up an army on a big gray base plate, then this is absolutely fine, but if you want to do anything else with your minifigures, then not really. And then moving on to take a quick look at MandR Shop, I chose this one because, well, Ryan is definitely the loudest voice when it comes to printed Waistcapes. And I'm not saying that that is inherently a good thing or inherently a bad thing. That's just the way it is, and since it's the way it is, I figured that I should take a look at his solution to the problem. Which, first impressions before I even bought the thing, I was very disappointed to find out that he only had 2 different kinds of Waistcapes available. That is definitely something that Clone Army Customs has going for them that MandR does not. However, I think that for the most part, MandR Shop does a lot better in most of the other categories. Upon removing this from the package, the first very apparent difference that you'll notice between this and Clone Army Customs is the fact that this is made out of fabric. The fabric does feel pretty high quality. It's about on par with the official LEGO fabric, I would say. Although some of the key differences that I noticed was, number one, it doesn't have as much of a matte finish as the official LEGO fabric. It's considerably shinier, and I much prefer the matte finish that the official LEGO product has. The second big difference that I noticed between this and official LEGO fabric is that the stitch patterns on this one are considerably larger. It's not too bad, but it does give it a much more visible texture, which I personally don't prefer. I think that it's nicer to have it more smoothed out like LEGO does. One huge plus that this Waistcape does have, however, is the fact that it is incredibly easy to put on. Like, this is actually easier than the official LEGO Kamas, I think, and apologies for getting it out of the frame there for a moment, but yeah, this thing actually went on super smoothly, super easily. I was very impressed and very pleased with that. And then, of course, once it is on, it does look pretty aesthetically pleasing, which I'm glad it does. I would hope it does, but now that I'm twirling the Rex figure around, you can kind of see how it's different from the LEGO fabric like I was talking about earlier. The stitches are a little bit bigger, it's a little bit shinier, but it does feel pretty safe to bend and move the legs around on this one, and it feels less crinkly than official LEGO Kamas. Another interesting difference between this custom Kama and official LEGO parts is the fact that that back actually sits up pretty high, and I do wonder if that might have something to do with the fact that this does just feel a lot more playable. But yeah, overall, I think that this is actually a pretty good custom product, which I'd hope to get from the guy that quotes LEGO's slogan more than LEGO itself does. And then going to the last segment of the video before my final thoughts in this comparison, we'll take a look at King Customs. Now, King Customs, first and foremost, is a store for clone decals. And I figured that I'd go ahead and pick King's Customs because, well, if somebody's doing clone decals, then they're also probably the type of person that's going to buy custom Waistcapes. So if you wanted to do both decals and Waistcapes, then this can help you decide if you want to make it a one-stop shop. So, if you do decide to go with King Customs, you will definitely have a very different experience from the others. First of all, this is some very excellent fabric. It is easily the closest to the official LEGO material out of all of the other Waistcapes that we've seen in this video. The texture and the weight and just kind of the way that it handles is really, really good. However, as I am sure you have noticed by now, the Kama does not come as its own piece. Yeah, the wonderful task of cutting it out is left to you. And yes, you do have to cut it. There are no perforations or anything like I would have preferred, so hello scissors. And yes, I imagine that it would be a lot easier to use an X-Acto knife with this, but on the website it does say to use scissors or a hobby knife, and since I don't own an X-Acto knife, I'll give the scissors a try. And let me tell ya, I am definitely not super skilled with scissors. I am not very skilled with an X-Acto knife either though, so I can't imagine that this would have looked too much different. As you can tell, there is a lot of fraying on the edges, and even where the edges are not frayed, I still am not able to give it that good of a cut. I didn't even really try to do the holes, I just poked it and hoped that I could maybe muscle it on, but yeah, that definitely wasn't happening because, well, like I said earlier, the fabric is pretty good quality. And let me just re-emphasize, this is absolutely not the fault of King Customs by any means. This is just me having really huge sausagey fingers and not being very precise. So if you have a lot of finesse with an X-Acto knife or scissors, then I can definitely say go for it. The fabric feels great, and if you can get it to look good, then I think that it really will look pretty good. But for most people, I think that just the fact that you have to cut it in the first place is kind of a turnoff. And I should also mention the backs of all of their fabric products are just a solid black color. So if you wanted to get like a blue waistcape, the inside of it would be black. So just keep that in mind if that's important to you. And well, we've now had a chance to look at each of these products separately. So what do they look like when compared to each other? Who are the winners and who are the losers? Well, it is honestly not very cut and dry at all. Each one has some pretty good strengths and some pretty big drawbacks. Clone Army Customs has some really good variety that you're not going to see in a lot of other stores. The quality of the material is just so bad. MandR Shop has some really good quality. The camas are super easy to put on. There's just basically no variety. If there was a larger selection of types and colors on this website, I think that I could easily recommend this as the best one. And then King's Customs has some absolutely insane quality material, but it is just one of the most inconvenient custom things to put on. So I think that my order of recommendations would be, if the only figures that you're concerned about Waistcapes for are Rex and Fox, then absolutely go for the MandR Shop. If you need more than that and you're okay with doing a lot of cutting, then King's Customs would be the next best option. And if you don't want to do a lot of cutting, then at least try to find something other than Clone Army Customs before you go with them, because the material just really is not very good. But if all that you're going to do is look at the figures on a shelf, then the Clone Army Customs will work. And like I said earlier, there are tons of these companies, way more than I could ever cover in a single video. So if there's a certain brand that you would like me to cover, definitely tell me about it in the comments, because I am absolutely open to doing a part 2 to this video if this one does well. And let me know if you've ever had any positive or negative experiences with any of these brands. But either way, if you want to increase the number of awesomeness particles that surround you at any given time, then make sure you check out some end screen content now and like this video and subscribe, yada yada yada, all the regular stuff.